It's such an honor and great pleasure for me to be here with all of you today for interpreting the power of stelliums in the chart and in the sky. I'm Jessica DiRuzza, and I am a professional astrologer of 17 years. I can't believe it. I'm also a psychotherapist and have been in private practice for over a decade. I run an online astrology school with my husband, Travis DiRuzza, called Trust Psyche School of Astrology and Depth Psychology. And our big announcement here at the beginning today is that we're having our first ever flash sale in the decade that we've been doing this. And we're doing 20% off all astrology readings, gift certificates that can be used for you or your loved ones that never expire, all our classes, and our 3 astrology handbooks. We've never done this before. We're so excited to do it now. And it goes through tomorrow, Monday, May 20th. And you can go to trustpsyche.com and see it all there and join the fun. We'd absolutely love for you to come on in any way that feels right to you. I'll say more about the flash sale at the end of this talk, but I really want to dive in to how we work with stelliums when we're trying to interpret them, whether that's in the birth chart or in the world transits. So first, let's begin by defining what a stellium is. A stellium is when there is a conjunction of 3 or more planets in the sky. It could be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way up. And a conjunction meaning same place in the sky. Stelliums happen all the time. They're going on right now, which is what inspired me to come and give this live today. They also happen in a lot of people's natal charts. Maybe they're in your natal chart. But I think that they are inherently mysterious and challenging to interpret because there's so much going on at once. There's so much complexity and variability that they can kind of be daunting to approach. And so sometimes we can kind of want to sidestep it or not really go into it because we can get overwhelmed when we look at a stellium. And I think that that's just part of what comes with stelliums. I think it's part of their nature is that they can be kind of overwhelming and challenging and daunting. But what I want to do today is give you demonstrations of how I approach stelliums and some of my thoughts around them, just to better support you and empower you to hopefully be just a little less intimidated by them and to really hopefully make it more of an inviting exploration because there's so much waiting inside of all stelliums that I think it can be really fun once we get past that threshold of initial potential intimidation or overwhelm that leads us into this whole beautiful, vibrant, and complex mystery of what stelliums are. So I want to actually begin by demonstrating the stellium that's going on in the sky right now. There is a quadruple conjunction of 4 planets in the sign of Taurus. The sun is with Jupiter, and then there's also Venus and Uranus. So we have 2 inner planets of the sun and Venus, and then we have the kind of interpersonal planet of Jupiter, which is the bridge out into the outer planets, and in this case, Uranus. So I'm going to approach this stellium in multiple ways to give you several examples of how I would enter this. Stelliums tend to be a little bit easier to interpret when inner planets are involved because inner planets are kind of like the minor arcana in the tarot. They are more personal, they're more down to earth, and oftentimes they can just feel a little bit more relatable and accessible. They also tend to have a little bit more concrete content in them. So it's a little easier for us to enter that way. So I'm actually going to do the first demonstration of interpreting this stellium by starting with the sun. In this case, the order goes like this as far as degrees go, which is going to be important for the next demo that I do. So I'm just giving you these degrees now to give you an example of how to interpret stelliums in the order in which they're presenting themselves by planetary degree. So the sun today is at 29 Taurus, Jupiter's at 28 Taurus, Venus is at 24 Taurus, and Uranus is at 23. So in this case, I'm going to start with the sun, a personal planet, And I'm actually going to go and visually, if you're looking left to right, and I'm going to start with the last degree and then work my way in. And then I'm going to reverse that and show you the opposite way. So the sun brings to conscious light of day through the dawning of our awareness. Whatever it touches, it highlights it, it infuses energy into it. But it also has to do with the self and our identity and who we are as individuals, and it has to do with the other individuals in our lives. So the sun being conjunct Jupiter tends to be a time that is very philosophical. Jupiter is the planet of philosophy, of religion and spirituality, of esotericism, of other cultures and travel. So during Sun-Jupiter conjunctions like we have today, right now, it's a time period where we kind of want to zoom out on our life and get that meta perspective from the mountaintop vision of what's really going on here from this Jupiterian bird's eye view. And the Sun Jupiter kind of allows our consciousness to elevate itself and lift up and get more of that philosophical and meta perspective, which is so great for things like getting new perspectives on life, getting a more expanded vision that allows us to see more of the whole of what's going on instead of the parts. It gives us this more whole or holistic view, and therefore a little bit more encompassing and integrative than when we're a little bit more narrowly focused like we are with Saturn. So Jupiter in its expansion and in its elevation allows us to get both a wider view, a greater breadth of perspective, but it also gives us a higher one. The higher we go, the more we're able to see. If you can imagine any time you've been in an airplane, or if you've been in a really tall high rise, the higher you go, the more you can survey the land. That's what Jupiter likes to do. So when the Sun and Jupiter get together, it gives us that quality of going up high and getting a grander view of what's going on in our life, which is wonderful whenever we're needing to have a greater sense of meaning of why what's happening is happening. Sun-Jupiter times also tend to be times where we feel more positive and optimistic about life. It's the positive attitude. It's really being a combination of positive and grateful for the abundance or the riches or the blessings and gifts in our life. And so it's a time period where that optimism kind of leads us even more into a greater state of consciousness that is faith-based or very hopeful. Jupiter is the planet of our faith, of hope. And so Sun-Jupiter times are prosperous times for having greater faith and greater hope. Now, when you bring in the next planet of Venus, we're moving into the space of the heart. Venus is our heart. It's our love. It's our sense of beauty. It's also the heart chakra. So Sun, Jupiter, Venus times are time periods where we tend to have a very kind of big-hearted love. Our hearts are more able to be open. So we have that expansion, but then we also have that heart opening that comes when Venus comes in. And it's a time period where we tend to want to be more social. Jupiter Venus is the alignment of being very socially gregarious, where we're feeling more positive and loving towards our friends and our community. To the person walking down the street, there's a generosity of spirit relationally and emotionally that comes with Sun, Jupiter, Venus. It's also a time period where we often feel more called to experience beauty in a grander sense. Jupiter makes everything grand and big, and Venus is not only our social relations of friendship and romantic partnership, but it's also the arts, right? And that call towards a greater sense of beauty and love and creativity in the world. And so it's a time period where we tend to be called more in towards the arts and the celebration of the arts, because that's what Jupiter does, is it celebrates whatever it touches and it honors it. And with the sun there, it's infusing all this energy into it. Think of the solar rays. Think of the incredible power and the light that comes from the sun. We wouldn't have life without it. So whenever the sun goes through a transit for you, or if the sun in your natal chart, it's this incredible place of energy. It's where a lot of your attention and energy and life force goes. So a Sun, Jupiter, Venus, now we're getting into the stellium because we have more than 2 planets. We're at 3. There's just this incredible solar fusion of energy and life force that's going in to Jupiter Venus, a time period of great pleasure and of enjoyment, of receptivity, of spending time doing the things you love for the pleasure of it, being more social. Maybe you're listening and enjoying music more, dancing more, appreciating the visual arts more. Maybe you're feeling more creative. It's a time period where we tend to feel more prolific. That's the Jupiter in Venusian ways, in our own creativity and creative expression. And it's a time period where we just feel more of an ability to experience awe in the world. And it's a time period where we also tend to, with Venus relating to money and finances, to spend more money. Jupiter Venus is a time period where we tend to be more prone to spending and shopping on things that we just love or desire. This is all Venus. But then you bring in Uranus, the 4th planet in this quadruple conjunction of this stellium here that I'm demonstrating. And Uranus brings this kind of eccentric flair. Uranus is the oddball. Uranus is the bizarre. It's the strange. It's the avant-garde. It's all that which is different and eccentric and outside the box. It's not the status quo. It's the opposite of that. It's a very innovative energy that comes in and just absolutely brings in the element of surprise and awakening. So when Uranus comes into this quadruple conjunction of this stellium I'm just describing, all of a sudden, it's not just this kind of grand philosophical, open-hearted take upon the world and in your relationships and with your creativity, but now it's all in service of liberation and freedom, emancipation and change, this electric lightning bolt coming in and bringing the element of disruption through the trickster in order to shake things up. And so it's a very electric energy. It's extremely dynamic. It can be very disruptive because Uranus is the element of surprise. It often has a quality of it of shock and awe. Again, the bizarre, right? The divergent, the thing that is different. And so because of that, this energy is an energy that is inherently unpredictable. So one way we could bring this in is like this sudden, unexpected surprise of a new relationship that really opens your heart, or the sudden, unexpected experience of an artistic piece that gets you to think about yourself and the world differently, a change in paradigm or a shift in perspective of the sudden wow factor of I've never seen this before, or I haven't experienced this before, and the insights and revelation that Uranus brings through Venus, through creativity, through the arts, through love, through beauty, through relationships, through all of your social relations, but in this grand, big, expansive, kind of over the top, abundant way that Jupiter brings. And then the sun highlighting all of this and really bringing it even more so into your personal life. So this is one way that we begin to weave together the multiple archetypal energies that we see in a stellium. There is no one way to do this. And in my demonstration of the various ways, what I'm showing you at the core is the ability to take the chance to go in and weave together, because that's what we're doing as astrologers, is we're weaving together all these different archetypal energies to tell, hopefully, a coherent story that lands, right? So Jupiter is also the aspect of mythology. It's the storyteller. And so this is a time period where we can really get this kind of dawning awareness and this highlighting gift of seeing how we can tell a story in a different way. So Sun, Jupiter, Venus, Uranus is an incredible time to tell the story of your life or an aspect of your life in a new way. It's that innovation of Uranus that wants the new, a new beginning, a new perspective, a new insight in service of liberation and freedom of your heart, of how you love yourself and how you love others. The sudden revelation of how to open your heart more to yourself through that self-love of Sun Venus, which is what Sun Venus wants, is that component of how do we love ourselves better so that we can then extend and expand that out to love others. Usually when we're asking this question of the Venusian other, we need to come first into the sun of the self and say, how would I do this for myself? Recently, I had a client of mine who is needing to write their vows for their wedding, and they were like, how do I do this? And I was like, well, first we start with the self before we extend that out to our partner, right? Venus is our love, it's our partnership, it's all our partnerships, romantic and otherwise. And so when we go to do something like write a vow, we first have to know what vows am I making to the self, right? This is part of what the Sun Venus shows us, is how do we move beyond this kind of superficiality of overextending with the Jupiter to the other and actually rein it in for a moment and say, how do I give this grand love and grand vow, this grand Jupiterian open-heartedness first to me, so that I can genuinely extend it out. So this is just an example of how we are all being called to open our hearts more right now, but it's in service of Uranus. It's in service of revelation and insight and getting and receiving an epiphany in order to be able to shift the narrative of how we're telling the Jupiterian mythos of our own life, the sun, our identity, our self. So a lot of us right now are having these revelations and epiphanies around our identity or around our story in order hopefully to infuse more Venus, more love, more acceptance, more harmony, more balance, because that's what Venus wants. It doesn't just want beauty, but it wants balance and it wants harmony. But in this kind of unexpected Uranian twist in the plot, Venus-Uranus is the sudden, unexpected, heart-opening, bursting out into the world of, having these incredible experiences that you didn't expect that get you to experience love and beauty in a new way for you. So an example of this, last night, my husband Travis picked out a film for us to watch. We watched this movie called Musica, which is excellent if you haven't seen it. And it is such a Venus-Uranus story. It's such a different take on what it's like to be a creative. And watching this story was so deeply moving for both of us. We were crying through it. We were laughing through it. And the unexpected gift, which is more of the Jupiter, Venus, Uranus, because Jupiter is the gift, Uranus is the unexpected, but Jupiter, Venus definitely is about gift giving, that generosity of spirit. And so I felt like this was this unexpected gift that we both received by watching this film. I think Travis really experienced it as a musician, and the unexpected gift of really being understood by the person that starred and produced and created Musica. Travis, who's also a Venus-Uranus person, this is his Venus return and the beginning of his Uranus opposition. And so he's really coming more fully into his Venus-Uranus right now. It's in the sky. We're watching this film. It's all Venus-Uranus, and boom, you get this archetypal resonance that's so multidimensional and valent and holographic. And that's one of the best moments in life that totally touch us at our core. And then I experienced it as this unexpected gift because clearly this person is neurodivergent, just like myself. And a lot of the way that they were describing their experience, their sensory experience, was very similar to how I have pattern recognition in my environment, not through music, but in other ways. And it just brought me to tears and laughter. Jupiter Uranus is like the grand comedy, right? And so part of its gift is ultimately it infuses an incredible amount of humor into our lives in order for us to laugh more about whatever our situation is, whoever we are. And with the sun there, it's like this kind of comedic relief around our sense of self and self-perception and identity, but in a Venusian way. It's loving, it's kind, it's creative, right? There's more of a warmth to it when Venus comes in. It's like this warm heartedness. Again, it's the heart chakra. So we're really talking about the heart coming into our identity and sense of self, but in this Jupiter Uranus kind of grand comedic relief and the humor that we find in comedy, which is so needed, right? We all need that for our mental health. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and I just love that there's this once in every 14-year Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, and connecting that to so much of our mental health is our ability to laugh at ourselves and to laugh at what's going on in life. So now I'm going to focus in on interpreting this quadruple stellium by going with the outers in. So when we're looking at the world transits, where the planets are in the sky right now for everybody, we want to understand what the outer planets are doing, because those transits last so much longer than the inner ones. So the sun and Venus are moving so quickly that they're only going to stay in conjunction for a little bit, compared to the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, which started in June of last year, 2023, goes through June of this year, 2024. And so we're here at the end of the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in Taurus that we've all been experiencing for almost the entire last year, except right now, the two inners of Sun and Venus are there. So again, making it come down to earth, right? Taurus, come down to earth. It's much more personal, minor arcana instead of major arcana. It's like the outer planets are like the transpersonal, grand major arcana. So we have to be able to understand the outer planetary alignments, like this one of Jupiter and Uranus. So we can go and say, let's just talk about Jupiter-Uranus themes first, and then weave in the inners. And you can do this for the natal chart, or you can do this for the world transits. So Jupiter-Uranus is a time of big revelation, the sudden, unexpected blessings and gifts coming into our life. Some good words for it is being unburdened, lightening your load, taking problems off your plate in sudden, unexpected plot twists that can be chaotic and disruptive, and there's a shock and awe quality to it for sure, without a doubt. Shock and awe. And I would like to slow that down a little bit. Shock. Whoa, where did this come from? Jupiter-Uranus is the curveball coming out of left field, being blindsided, the rug pulling out from under you, things breaking down and cracking open. I do not want to minimize that part of it, because that is definitely shocking, but it's also the awe. It's not just the shock. If we stay with it, then it also gets to a place of awe. And that's the Jupiter with the Uranus. So it's the shock, and then, I see what I wasn't seeing before that I needed to see to unburden myself, to move through things that have been blocks and obstacles, places of great resistance, and places of impossibility, things that have just felt immovable and impossible, a conundrum. Jupiter-Uranus comes in and it brings the shock and the awe to get us out of that state of mind or that mode of being or even that worldview, because it is a paradigm shifting energy. That's part of the shock and the awe. And Jupiter is our worldview, right? Think of the ninth house. It's how we make meaning of things. That's why it's the aspect of the storyteller and of mythology and of culture and religion. It's the aspect of the people. But Uranus wants change, and it wants new beginnings and breakthrough and rebirth and renewal. So when you get the two together, it's a time period where we can tend to make these kind of quantum leaps of we're here and then bam, we're up leveling to here. And it's like, how did that happen? And so we can go and say, where are the places in my life where I have felt for a long time the most stuck, the most oppressed, and the most resistance? And Jupiter, Uranus comes in through the shock and the awe, and it goes, and it can blow our mind and also blow our world open and sometimes apart in order to move into a radical new way of being. It's a renovation, it's a redoing, it's a profound renewal. So that's the Jupiter Uranus energy, right? So then we can understand that. And then we go, so how do we bring in the inner planets of Venus? Well, right now, as Venus is coming in for her shorter stay with the Jupiter Uranus, we're going to be experiencing everything I just described through Venus, through relationships, through love, through money and finance, through our resources, through a sense of what we value, what we love, what we find beautiful, what we're attracted to. We might be surprising ourselves. Right now, I'm trying to stay very open to surprising myself on saying, what if I say, I actually don't know what I love? I don't know what I find beautiful. Surprise me. And I'm noticing my heart opening to these new ways of loving and loving in new ways that feels very expansive and celebratory, because Venus Uranus is about learning to love in new ways, but with Jupiter there to help us grow, right? Jupiter wants us to grow. It wants us to become bigger and better. And with Venus there, it wants us to do that through our heart. It wants us to do that with how we value ourselves, how we value others. It wants us to do that with our resources, our money, our finances, but it also wants us to do that with our creativity. It wants us to be creative in new ways that honors the Uranus of it being risk-taking, and Jupiter saying, you know what, if you're willing to take the risk, there might be some incredible growth. I mean, here's the thing about releasing and letting go, which is what Jupiter Uranus is about, is in order to grow and in order to get that renewal, to become something that we haven't been before, the requirement of the passageway through is we have to let go of the past. We have to let go of who we were before, how we were before, in order to get that rebirth and renewal. That's the way it works. So Jupiter Uranus tells us that, very similar to the death card and the tarot of the major arcana. It's the releasing and the renovation, but the letting go that's required to do that, right? And then Venus, it's like, and right now it's like, can you do that in all the Venusian ways? But also the sun. It has a lot to do with you and your choice. The sun represents our free will. It's our vitality and our life force, but it's also our will. It's our choice and the choices that we can make. And so it's like, are you willing to make new choices around how you create? Are you willing to make new choices around how you love? Are you willing to make new choices around your finances? Are you willing to make new choices around how you have a sense of self-worth? Sun Venus is our self-worth that can only come from inside of ourselves. And then the Jupiter Uranus is, are you willing to give that to yourself in a renewed way that's different than the way you did it before, for in service of greater Jupiter Uranus freedom, liberation, and unburdening of the self, right? That's the sun in there. It's the unburdening of the self. Can we move to greater ease and freedom? Jupiter Venus is so much about ease, greater ease, things being more harmonious, smoother, easier, more in flow. And the sun is like, can we choose to do that? Can we align ourselves to do that? So that's another way that you can do the stellium. What I want to do is I want to make a little bit of a kind of technical comment here on stelliums, and then I'm actually going to shift and demo one more before we end for today. So when we look at stelliums in the birth chart, we really want to pay attention to the order of the planets, because the planet that comes first in degree will always be the planet that gets aspected by world transits in your personal transits. So let's say in this case, if you had Uranus first, then it would go like this. Let's say the order for you was Uranus, Venus, Jupiter, Sun, from lowest degree to highest degree, which is the case right now in the world transits. Then all your personal transits would first aspect Uranus, then Venus, then Jupiter, then the Sun. So this sequential unfolding of the order of the planets is very significant in understanding how your personality and your life events unfold, because the first planet is the one that is going to get activated and opened up, and then the next and the next and the next. So you really want to pay attention to what the order is for you, because that's going to help you understand the narrative unfolding of the order of significance for you in your life story. So if we're looking at it in kind of a more of a linear storytelling way, then we start with the lowest degree and move to the highest degree. And then we practice that element of curiosity and trust, that there's a reason why your soul picked a chart where Uranus was first and followed by Venus, then Jupiter, then the Sun. And when we do that and we bring that curiosity and trust into it, we can deepen into the why of that order for you in your natal chart, and then understand that through the unfolding of time through your personal transits. And a really good astrologer can interpret this for you. So this is why I really love giving readings and encouraging readings, is because a really good astrologer would be able to help you understand this for yourself. Because here's the thing, is we not all process reality the same, but depending on our birth chart, we experience energies in a particular order and in a particular quality that is going to be different than those around us. And this is kind of part of the insight of the Venus Uranus that's in the sky right now, with Jupiter there, and our kind of philosophical take on the Sun, which is why we're all unique individuals. This is really what Sun Uranus is about, is being a unique individual. And that is, astrology shows us that we are all built differently and built in a unique way. And when we learn about the astrology, we're actually learning about the way someone processes reality, and the ways in which someone processes reality in a way that's different than us. And this is why something like doing a synastry reading, of putting two charts together, doing relationship counseling is so essential, because it helps us get insight and perspective into the ways in which we are different, the ways in which me and my husband are different from each other, the ways in which my daughter and I are different from each other, and being able to not only have that perspective of our differences, but hopefully to also Jupiter honor them and Venus love them in service of greater harmony, and really greater capacity for co-creation by Jupiter honoring Uranus, our differences. So that's also kind of another take on this stellium in application to why we both do synastry and composite chart readings and relationship counseling, but also why it's important to understand the order of the planets and how that varies for each of us. Okay, I am going to demo one more stellium for us here. All right. Just gonna pause because the energy is very different. Just kind of need to shift it here. 1 second. So now you're going to notice a vibrational shift in my describing this next stellium to demonstrate to you. You probably all just noticed that when I was describing the last one, the energy was very high and electric and fast and synchronous, full of synchronicity. That's the nature of that particular stellium of Sun, Jupiter, Venus, Uranus. So this other stellium, I'm going to focus on 3 planets this time instead of 4. And this one's going to probably not only be a different universe, which every stellium is its own universe, to be discovered again and again, but like it's also going to be an example of things being maybe not, I want to say less defined, but a little different. You're going to see why. So now I'm going to do the triple conjunction of Mars, the North Node, and Chiron. So right now, Mars is at 14 Aries, the North Node is at 14 Aries, and Chiron is at 21 Aries. So we're shifting from a stellium in Taurus to a stellium in Aries. Also just want to mention that right in this moment, the moon is at 14 degrees Libra, exactly conjunct the South Node at 14 degrees Libra, opposite the Mars North Node. So just want to name that and know that that's the astrology of this moment. And what I am describing here today applies all the time to all stelliums. It's just wanting to name that for you so you can understand just and feel, kind of track the energy present. Okay, so Mars is the ruling planet of Aries, right? It's the principle of fire. And Mars' nature is to activate and catalyze whatever it touches. It brings an incredible dynamic energy that is full of fire and of spirit. And when you get Mars with the North Node and Chiron, you get something like this. This incredible activation of our wounds that serve as doorways for us to walk through. Chiron is our wounds. It's the immortal wound. It's the transpersonal wound. It's the wound that we carry with us throughout life. And there's something about Chiron that is experienced as both tender and raw. And the idea of it being an immortal wound is that it's something that we can't ever cure or make go away. We can care for it. We can learn to take care of it and tend to it, but we can't make it go away. We can't make it disappear. We can rewrite it. We can kind of spiralically be with it again and again and again in different ways. And there is healing in that. And there is elevation and growth in that. But we don't make it go away. There are things in each of our human lives that have happened that have been traumatic for us, that are things, are wounds that we carry. That's part of the nature of being human, is that we are chironic, and choosing to incarnate is inherently a chironic act because being human is traumatic. There is a dimension of being human that is painful, and there is suffering for all of us. And so Chiron represents the wound, but it also represents the healing and the wholeness that we can experience by learning to care for those most tender, vulnerable places inside that often are an interesting mix of vulnerability and shame. So when Mars and Chiron come together in the sky, Mars is going to activate those chironic wounds, those most tender, raw places inside that we each carry. But with the North Node there being our Dharma and our destiny, there are opportunities of doorways to be opened if we choose to step through it, if we align, our Mars will, similar to the sun, to walk through those doors, through the cleansing tears of grief, by being with those most tender, vulnerable places, and the dissolving or washing away of the shame that comes when we choose to show up for those hurt places inside. Then the North Node place of destiny opens. There are new doorways that we get to walk through and experience ourselves in the world in a different way than before. So at first, the Mars Chiron can be very activating, and it can show up as potentially irritation, irritability, impatience, overstimulation, frustration, because when Mars comes in, there is something very quick and pointed about it. And we think of the spear, for example, or a sword. Quick and pointed is kind of the opposite of what we want to think of when we're going into places inside that are traumatic. Usually we want to move slowly and with lots of grace and compassion. It's a gradual process. But that's not Mars's nature. That's not Aries' nature. And so both the quickness and the pointedness of it can at first feel like the arrow is going right in to one's most vulnerable places. And can be experienced as a big ouch, like, whoa, like just that feeling like if you feel gutted or stabbed in the heart, that's that quality of Mars Chiron. When we're able to show up for that place where we feel gutted or stabbed in the heart, then the North Node becomes this place of a portal opening where we can move into the future, which is what the North Node is about, with a lot of courage. Mars is our courage. It's the warrior who's willing to show up. I think a good phrase for Mars, especially Mars and Aries, is the ability to show up, show out. And so the Chiron is the, oh my God. And then the ability to stay with it and have the Mars courage, the warrior, to show up for the pain there. And by staying with it and caring for it and fighting for what your actual truth is, or what you needed in a reparative experience for whatever the rupture that was caused there in the present moment, that's linked back into the past, because that's what Chiron is, right? It's the wounds that get hurt in the present that transport us back in time in this life and in previous incarnations of those unresolved immortal wounds that we carry with us. And by having the courage to show up for it, we go in and we get the other face of Chiron, and that's the journey portal through the pain into the healing. Is the love and the care and the grace of the healing that comes from our ability to feel what we're feeling around the wound, to talk about it with someone who is safe in a compassionate space, but also to grieve it. Chiron is nature, and by its requirement, every planet has its own guardian of the threshold of transfiguration. For Chiron, it is always grief. Whether those are tears, whether those are intercellular shaking off, dancing it out, crying it out, singing it out, screaming it out, whatever your way of grieving is. We know there's not any one way to do it, but that is what Chiron needs. And by being with it in this warrior-like fashion of strength, yes, I'm willing to fight for this because it matters. That's when Mars is at its best. I'm willing to fight for this because it matters. We show up for the grief in Chiron. We tend to it. We care for it. We don't try to cure it. We tend for it. We care for it. And voila. there's this destiny point opening into a new future, into a new way of being. And that's the North Node, right? It's our destiny, it's our future, it's where our soul is going in its evolutionary growth process. And so under this stellium of Mars, North Node, Chiron, there are these moments that we're each experiencing right now of being gutted, of being stabbed in the heart, of being stabbed in the back, of being punctured and pointed and sliced and cut in some way that is painful, that hurts, that makes us angry, that then makes us sad. And if we can be with that, what I see over and over again in my own journey and in the people that I work with is that that dissolves into healing. And we regain a grander and more expansive sense of self than we had before. So this stellium is ushering in this kind of energy. This stellium is very prone to being overheated, overreactive, combative, getting into non-productive fights is its shadow. Like, I'm hurt, so I'm going to hurt you, has a very like eye for an eye quality. You hurt me, I'm going to give it to you. Instead of you hurt me, ouch, let me slow down and feel the pain in that and cry about that or talk about that. It can very much be, you're going to stab me, I'm going to stab you, or I can tell you're going to hurt me, so I'm going to hurt you first. That's part of, honestly, the juvenility of Aries. I can say that as an Aries moon. It's just part of the juvenility of it. We got to be honest about the shadow of every alignment. And when you have Mars in there, it even makes it more prone to that. So I actually had to take an oath this past week that I wasn't going to be mean, that I whenever I got flared up, and irritable, I would do my best to tend to that in myself and come back to my center, to a place where I'm not being reactive and instead using the Mars to turn inward toward the Chiron. Because the thing about Chiron is it's always inside of us, but it's kind of paradoxical nature is often the way we experience and feel our Chiron is outside of us and something that's happening to us by the other people in our life or in our environment, like in our childhood experience or, whatever your Chironic story is. But it's those external experiences that allow for the choice to turn inward and go inside and be with the pain that's there in that Chiron. And so we can use the Mars to show up in battle and hurt others. Or in this case, we can use the Mars to choose to have the courage to turn inward and be with the Chiron on the inside. And what I'm whispering to you here is that that's actually the doorway that's going to open up into a new place of being. Okay, so that is my example of how I would do a different way of interpreting a stellium. I want to thank you so much for being here with me today. It's always just an incredible honor and pleasure to come on here. And I wanted to mention this awesome bookshelf that I'm giving this talk in front of. My husband, Travis DiRuzza, made this. He got all of this out of his desk that he wrote his dissertation on. You can't see the whole thing, but it goes from the floor to the ceiling. And he did this incredible job of sanding and staining this and building it out. And this actually makes the shape of Gemini here in the thick wood. Travis has Gemini at the midheaven, and it's a great honoring of his Mercury up there as well. He actually does his readings in front of this desk and writes in front of this. And this clock here is about 200 years old. And it was made by his great-great-great-grandfather, or was it made by him or was it owned by him? I think it was owned by him. And that Travis actually inherited this from his grandfather, with whom he shares a birthday with on June 22nd, our little Cancers. The clock works. We actually got it back in working condition, but we just stopped it now for the talk. And I just love it. It houses all of our astrology books and psychology books and philosophy books. And it's a great showcase and honoring of the Sun, Jupiter, Venus, Uranus that I started this talk with. And this is an awesome deer skull that Travis found in the ground when he was actually doing a fire ceremony. Oh my gosh, like 11 years ago. So I just love this, and I love it. It's so beautiful. I just want to say that the flash sale right now, our first ever, it's the first one we've ever done in 10 years, is going on through tomorrow, Monday, May 20th. It's 20% off astrology readings, gift certificates that never expire, so you can store them up. You can use them for yourself later or for a loved one. All our astrology courses, you guys, we have 6 recorded astrology courses, all on demand that you can take online anytime you want. It's 200 hours of material. It's a third of a master's degree. We're going all the way with it. And also, we've written 3 astrology handbooks. So the thing is the best way to support us is in some way to just share the love. So that's liking this video, leaving a comment, sharing this with your friends and family, or coming and getting a reading with us, or taking classes with us. Living astrology with us in some way is what allows us to be here, do this work. We've been doing this for a decade together. We have decades left to go. And this flash sale is in honoring of our last 10 years together under this Jupiter-Uranus cycle and the seeding of decades of more astrology and psychology to come. So I'd love for you to check out our flash sale or just to see our work at trustpsyche.com. I just want to finish by saying I am so tickled that not only do I get to have an astrology and psychology school, but that we also opened our magic shop. And I realized this morning over tea that our magic shop is equivalent to a bookstore on campus that you would go to, but it's Hogwarts style, right? So all of the books inside, and in the future, more merchandise, like magical wands, it's in service of magic, and there's just nothing that could make me happier than that. So I love teaching. I love getting to work with all of you from all around the world for all these years, and I just have the hugest smile on my face and in my heart, and it's a lot of love and gratitude for getting to do this work, and that you care to be here with us. It really means the world to both Travis and I. So thank you so much. And I very much look forward to seeing you here next time. And there's a lot more great stuff that we have coming. Thank you so much, everybody. It's an honor and a pleasure. And I hope you enjoy these transits as much as possible. I'm going to end here with the bell and sending my love and my prayers to all of you.